So welcome everyone. You join me today in Tess, my 1967 Triumph Vitesse to Litre, and we're making our way along the back lanes of Rushbrook to the rather beautiful and ancient market town of Bury St.Edmunds, which is the town that takes its name from St. Edmund, the Saxon martyr. And the town, of course, was built really around the abbey, which commemorates the final resting place of St. Edmund. The abbey itself is now just a sort of magnificent ruin, out of which came two smaller churches, the Church of St. James and St. Mary's. St. Mary's very much remains as a parish church. St. James's Church in the 20th century became Bury St.Edmunds Cathedral and has been extended, and at the turn of this century was completed with this splendid Millennium Tower, which we may get a glimpse of. It's a June afternoon, and the journey from where I live in the east of the county to the west has become increasingly overcast, and we've already got the sort of first spots of rain. So I'm hoping this doesn't mar your view out, but we will see. So as I was saying, Bury is sort of famous for its abbey. The abbey itself has this checkered history. It was ransacked and plundered at least a couple of times, and finally turned over by a furious populace who effectively stole quite a lot of the stone and carted it off, and the remnants of the sort of stolen stonework can be found all over the centre of the town, because a lot of it went to construct the foundations and basements of some of the town centre houses. So we're approaching Bury now via Southgate Street, and like many medieval towns, the roads in on the 4 points of a compass each had their own gates, and so in this town we have Northgate Street, Southgate Street, Eastgate Street and Westgate Street. Just ahead of us is the Millennium Tower of the Abbey, you can just see poking up above the houses. And we're coming into Mainwater Lane and approaching the famous Green King Brewery. And sometimes when you come into the centre, you sort of smell the brewery before you see it, but here it is right ahead of us. So as we come into the restricted zone, St. Mary's Church is here on our right hand side, and the tower that you can see just above my finger is the Norman Tower, and this obviously built after 1066. What was the Church of St. James, which is now St. James's Cathedral, which is a pretty cathedral, Small, but very pretty. So just across to my right, you're looking at the west front, which is one of the largest parts of the abbey still standing, and it was sort of the, I suppose, the entrance, if you like, to the original abbey, and that facade has been incorporated into dwellings, so they're private houses which have sort of borrowed the front of the abbey, but it's impressive, but it doesn't give you any sense of the true size of the building that was here. And again, you know, trying to sort of remember that in this modest market town, you know, in the medieval period there was an abbey which was one of the third largest in the world is extraordinary. And in front of us we've got the Angel Hotel, and as we come round we'll be able to get a look at the Abbey Gate, which is a magnificent medieval structure, complete with its portcullis. When I was a kid I used to go to school here, and we used to cycle, and my school was the other side of the Abbey Gardens, which meant cycling through this very gate. And one of the things you used to have to do was, if you went through, you always had to put the hood of your coat up, because there were pigeons that would roost up high in the gate and do the most unspeakable things, given half a chance, on your head. So I'm just going to give you a little sort of look again at some of the architecture, and you can see sort of ahead of us you've got some of the older buildings still with their original facades, their jettied elevations and exposed timber framing. You can just see in these buildings the mullioned windows that I've talked about in other videos on the first floor. You've got the very top floor attic rooms with the dormer windows, but it's these mullioned windows which are glazed in these buildings, but of course originally would have not been glazed and would have just had boarded shutters that would have been slid across at night or on cold days to keep the wind and rain out. And into the Angel Hill with the Angel Hotel on our right and the Athenaeum ahead of us, and again to our left we've got the wonderful Abbey Gate, and you can see the brick and flint walls of the old abbey. I'll just sort of spin round here so you can have a closer look. Thank you. So to our left is the Norman Gate, and we're coming past, or I'll say that again, to our left is the Norman Tower, and just up here is St Mary's Church. We're looking up towards the Green King Brewery. As we come down Honey Hill into Sparhawk Street again, we've got St Mary's on our left, and some of these wonderful stone buildings which are built out of a rubble of the abbey when it was sacked by its local populace. You can see these stones that are set into the brickwork, but are sort of like random rubble walls. Coming around the back of the brewery here, into St Mary's Square, and again some magnificent Georgian architecture. Down Southgate Street, mixture of architecture here, timber framing, stone, brick, wonderful jetties. Again, up until the sort of 1970s, a lot of these houses incorporated shops as well, so this was very much part of a commercial hub. Coming up into Guildhall Street, named so because of the town's Guildhall, again an important part of the social and economic fabric of Bury, and you can see the splendid gated entrance to the Guildhall just here. Georgian architecture left and right. Again, remember these are often facaded buildings, so the medieval houses sit behind them. And then we're coming up towards the Corn Hill here, and of course the Corn Exchange, the building we're looking at here, was the hub of the commercial centre of Bury, where barley and wheat would be traded. Now unfortunately we can't get through because it's Saturday and market day, so we'll have to go down Whiting Street. And the pub that you'll see on our left is sort of more reminiscent actually of the architecture you find in places like Kent. So the Mason's Arms is a timber frame building, but instead of being colour washed with its elevation of lath and plaster, it's lap boarded, something again people from the United States would recognise as an obvious method of construction. You see the jetties on these houses here, and again on this one, this little pink one which looks like a sort of gingerbread cottage, almost gravity defying. Yeah, so I thought I'd stop and just show you this wonderful Art Deco garage that we have here. So this has been obviously a feature of my childhood, this garage, and in fact I bought my first car here when I began working. But I'll just spin the camera around so you can have a little look. So yeah, I've just spun the camera around so you can have a little look, and you can see these wonderful old petrol pumps with their shell globes here. And yeah, my only sadness is that the garage sells modern cars, not classic cars. But yeah, I think it would be a great venue for a classic car business. The pub just the other side of a roundabout ahead of us, which is now called the Beer House. When I was a teenager, it was known as the Ipswich Arms, and there is nothing remarkable about this pub at all, except for one thing, and I'm hoping that enough time has passed that there's a kind of statute of limitation, so I'm not about to slander anyone here, but the significance of the Ipswich Arms for me at the age of 16, and just about every other 16-year-old male that I knew at the time, was that it would serve you underage, and it was something of a rite of passage to us that we could claim that we'd all had our first illegal drink at the Ipswich Arms. And it's fascinating because it always makes me sort of wonder how it was they were able to get away with it, because if we knew, then our parents all knew, the police absolutely knew. Just coming up into Pump Lane here. And to our left is the Farmers Club. Again, still an important venue, but traditionally very important meeting place, particularly on market days, as we were talking about earlier, as a way to share ideas and obviously to entertain, and I suppose to establish a sense of community, because farming has always been a lonely business, and particularly in more recent times, it's, you know, with mechanization, it's become more solitary. And I think, you know, a very important feature of farming life is a sense of being able to come together with other people who work in agriculture and sort of share concerns, and God knows there are enough of those at the moment. We're in the Victorian part of the town, and as you can see, there's this wonderful church spire on the top of St John's Church. Typical Victorian Gothic architecture, and it represents the creation of a new parish, if you like, and the need to attend to the sort of new industrialised workers that were coming into the town during the Victorian era, again to work in places like the tannery and the mills down by the river. But These buildings are arguably not as beautiful as the medieval ones that we've been looking at in the centre, but they're no less remarkable in their own way, and they represent social significance. I think for me what they represent is the change from the agrarian-based economy in Suffolk to the industrialisation, and we're now in a post-industrialised environment here where we've lost things like the cattle market to shopping centres, where on Saturday it's market day here. It never was a sort of cattle market day in that way. It was all sort of really about produce and an opportunity to come and buy goods, as it were. But it's seeing the town centre crammed not now with local people coming in on the buses, those wonderful old red Eastern Counties buses from the villages to come and do their weekly shop, but it's seeing tourists, and people come from all over the world. And one of the things you'll notice if you come to Bury, the weekend particularly, is the number of American accents you'll hear, and that's because of the military bases at Mildenhall and Lakenheath just down the road, and they bring lots of American personnel and their families into the area. And I think for some of them, they simply find the concept of medieval buildings and streets almost beyond comprehension, because in relative terms, American history as we think of it is so recent. That's if you forget about the fact that Vikings and Native Americans have a history of their own. But there we go. So we're now coming up Northgate Street past the Farmers Club on our right hand side, and we're coming towards the Cathedral and this magnificent Millennium Tower.